Fandoms are united as a community because of the power of the story, and it's exactly the magical alchemy forged when mixing story and community that has helped fandoms across the world feed thousands of hungry children, donate countless books, build schools, register voters, disrupt online hate speech, and save lives by coordinating natural disaster response and providing mental health crisis support. Fandom Acts of Kindness not only tells the stories of what good fans have done in the world, but serves as a dungeon master's guide to how to be a hero yourself. Perfect for those who want to inspire others, organize collective action, sustain and nurture your own mental health and creativity, and do it all through a pop culture perspective. A portion of the proceeds from Fandom Acts of Kindness will benefit the nonprofit organization Random Acts. Tanya and Kayla, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Why don't you give us a little background on how this book came about? And then I'm going to kind of turn you guys loose to explain a lot of the ins and outs of it.
Yeah, so the book came about because Kayla and I have been looking at what makes fans so unique and so special, and we were really impressed with examples of fandom-based charity work and activism we'd seen, and we had done about 6 or 7 years of research into fandom and fan communities, doing interviews with fans and ethnography of going to fan events and participating. And then we had started to share some of our results of this research at various conventions. And the question that we got asked when we were trying to explain why fans do charity work and when they do it and kind of quantify and categorize it was, that's all great, I appreciate that, but how do I do it? How do I actually engage in fan activism? Tell me the steps I can take to do that. Where's the guide? So we hope that this book is an answer to that question, and it does serve as a guide to fan activism.
All right. Well, Kayla, you have some interesting background, as does Tanya. Do you want to share a little bit about that, your professional background?
Yeah, so we're both social scientists. I'm a clinical psychologist. Tanya is a sociologist, and we met each other through fandom. So we met each other because the actor Misha Collins happened to tweet out about a project, kind of the beginnings of this project, actually, that Tanya was already working on. And I saw that tweet. I happened to also be getting into fandom research at the time and thought, oh, this is an excellent fit. This is exactly what I want to be doing. And so reached out to Tanya and said, hey, would you be interested in partnering? I think this combination of sociology and psychology could work really well together.
Okay, so I'd like for you two now to present kind of how the book came together and what the book is about. So why don't you tell us about how this book came together?
So in writing this book, we really had two goals. One was to lift up and celebrate all of the amazing ways that we saw fans serving their communities, working to make the world a better place, and fighting for the greater good. And the second goal was to provide a way for people to get involved in fan activism, community service, charity work that was sustainable, joyful, and fun. And so we hope we've accomplished those two goals with this book.
And I think in addition to that self-actualizing, part of what we hope with the book too is that we have put together something that is about finding what you care about, figuring out how to actually do fan activism, but also how to take care of yourself in fan activism. Both fandom and activism can be thrilling and exhausting in their own ways. And it is really, really important for the sustainability of social movements that we take care of ourselves. And so a lot of the kind of later half of the book is really focused on, okay, now you know how to do the stuff. How do you actually take care of yourself while you're doing it so that you can keep doing it long term?
it's been a wild ride and a really amazing journey to get to this point and to publish the book. We've met all kinds of amazing fans and heard lots of great stories. We actually met the fan that we wrote about who donated a kidney to another fan at a convention about a month ago earlier this year. And it was so great. She came up to us and she said, I'm this person. I'm in your book. This is me. I'm the person who donated a kidney. And I said, well, here you go. Here's a book. Have it on the house. I don't know that that's the best exchange. You gave a kidney. I'm going to give you a book, but please take it and know that we are grateful, and all of us in the community are grateful for all that you do. That's so great. So I also wanted to take a minute and define fan activism because we haven't yet. And for us, fan activism really falls on this spectrum of anything that people do to try to better the world or make their community better or get involved in making the world a better place, from charity work to signing petitions to going out and actually marching in protests or to disrupting hate speech online. Anything that they do in those categories where they are relying on their identity as a fan or their experience as a fan or something that inspires them as a fan, we call that fan activism. So it can really run a range of different things.
Yeah, and a goal in that was also to make those pieces around self-care, as well as those pieces around how to engage in activism, accessible to a wide variety of audiences. So this is the kind of book that we hope is accessible to folks who are brand new to fan activism and folks who have been doing fan activism for years. It's everything from how to find and sign petitions or register to vote to how to start organizations. We have some incredible stories about things like a fan donating an organ to another fan. So there's some really, really big things that are in there, and we don't want those big things to be intimidating because that's not accessible to everybody. So there's something for everyone in this. Yeah, so the age group for this is really, I think, probably teenagers and up. I think there are some things in there that could be accessible to a younger audience, but really it's geared mostly towards teenagers and up. And we definitely were thoughtful about diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the book. A lot of our examples of fan activism are directly related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of the way that we worded particular activities is meant to be accessible to folks from a wide range of different identities, and we ourselves do a lot of activism that is DE&I focused as well. And so I think a lot of that shows up in this book. And, we were talking earlier about different types of activism. And one thing that is unique with fan activism is particularly the type of fan activism we mostly focus on is media fandom. And so there is this way in which fandom can also broadcast messages through the media and through interaction with the media. And there are things that fans do sometimes to actually change the media itself and make it more inclusive, make it more equitable, tell diverse stories that were not told before. And some of that is in the book as well.
Speaking of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm going to rely a bit on my background as a community college educator and some of the training I've had in this field to define that. And I would say that diversity is what we have. It's lots of different identities, right? People from different racial, ethnic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, LGBTQIA plus identities, ability status, religious backgrounds, immigration status. That's diversity. And as I'm sure you're aware, Dennis, Aurora is one of the most amazing diverse communities in not just in Colorado, but in the state. So that's wonderful to get to live in a community with that richness. So inclusion would be intentionally bringing everyone in, giving folks what they need to participate fully in whatever you're asking them to do or whatever community space. I think that it's really interesting to think about this with respect to fandom, because I think fandom can be a very inclusive space, but sometimes it does have the same limits that we would see in broader spaces. And I will share that while both Kayla and I identify as white folks, we do have some identities that are a part of historically marginalized communities. And I will share that I myself have invisible disabilities, which I've written about in both a sociological perspective and in a fandom perspective, a little bit of both. So I wrote about disability studies in Game of Thrones and have an article on that and how looking at Game of Thrones can help us to understand and teach about disability as a social model versus an individual problem. And then I also wrote about how the COVID pandemic, has really translated into a national consciousness raising or awareness of long-term illnesses, long COVID and chronic illnesses in a way that we haven't seen in the past. So I think about this a lot. I'm very passionate about it. And I think Fandom is working to be more inclusive of people of all different identities. I think these media stories are really important for fostering a sense of tolerance and inclusion and being passionate about these things because, first of all, many of us growing up, we didn't see ourselves on screen or we didn't see our identities reflected in the stories that were being told most often. I think it's really important that these stories help us build empathy for others who we might not have direct interaction with. And I think that's a really important base for activism to start as well, because we need to have that value system and that caring to go out into the world and work to make it a better place for other folks. And I think one thing that folks really identify with in fandom stories or these media stories we're talking about is that if we see ourselves, that's wonderful, and we can connect with that, but we maybe also see a through line for how to build community and how to create support systems that are so vital for struggling and working to make the world a better place. One commonality in a lot of these media that you might see, like Star Wars or Firefly or The Expanse or some of these different nerdy products, is this theme of found families. So this idea that you may not be biologically or even legally related to these people that you're surrounded with. And we see this in workplace or sitcom comedies as well, like The Office or Parks and Rec. You may not be biologically or legally related to these folks, but you form strong bonds with them, and then they become a chosen family for you or a found family. And sometimes this can become more important or as significant as your family of origin or your biological family. And I mention that because for folks from historically marginalized communities, such as people from the LGBTQIA plus community, they may be estranged from or have difficulty connecting with or even have been, sort of excluded intentionally or kicked out of their home. And so finding this found family is really important. And then if you are a fan, right, and you maybe have some of these identities, whether or not you've had that trauma of feeling excluded from your family in the past, people in the fandom space that you meet, friends, can start to be your found family. And from there, you can build community. And then from there, you can build social movements.
I think to speak to the younger demographic within fandom, a lot of what we talk about is also about how to use the internet specifically. And that is something that unfortunately has really been sort of delegitimized by a lot of other folks in activism. And one of our goals was to talk about, yes, showing up, marching in the street is great. That is one thing that you can do. And there's all of these other things, including many things that can be done sitting in your home, on a computer, on your phone, however you access the internet. And something that we do see, I think that does skew a little bit younger, but not exclusively, is that coming together and finding community through the internet in ways that we just simply didn't, 20, 30 years ago. So taking some of those principles that we have from building social movements and being able to apply that to the fact that our social world just looks very different now than it used to.
Well, that's really quite interesting, and how this book all came together. One of the quotes that I saw about the book, it says, "Fandom can save the world. This first of its kind, actionable and inspirational resource provides the tools and motivation necessary for pop culture fans to make a difference while having fun." I just love the quote. Do you want to give us some final thoughts with that?
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So our final thoughts are that fans, we want to uplift and honor fans and the amazing work they've done to make our world a better place already and how inspiring they are. We want fandom to be joyful, fun, and sustainable, and we want everyone to know that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, you can make a difference. You are important and you matter.
And in addition to that, one of the ways that we set up the book is to be able to have fun while you're reading it. So there are lots of activities throughout the book to sort of break up the reading and get you into some of those actionable items. So how to start identifying what kind of causes you want to support, how to start identifying things about your own self-care. And all of those are embedded in nerdy fandom type examples that you should be able to relate to as a fan.
Well, that book sounds like so much fun, on top of being so informative and a great tool. And I want to thank both of you for taking the time to come on and share all about the Fandom Acts of Kindness.